Going across to this big exclusive that is just coming in, let's take a straight look at Union Minister Hardeep Puri, who is now in conversation with Rahul, India Today's news director.
Between the incumbent Congress on the one side and the Aam Aadmi Party, which hopes to form the government in the state. To get a sense about the stakes for the BJP, we're joined by the most prominent Sikh leader of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Hardeep Puri, with us live, Union Minister, and now very deeply entrenched in the politics of the BJP and in the politics of Punjab. Mr. Puri, welcome to India Today. It's a delight to be here. It's a bit nice and chilly, but it's very nice to be here. Thank you for the coffee. I want to start by asking you about the BJP's overall sense of what appears to be a five-way fight in Punjab. Usually it's a three-way fight. The Congress, the Akali BJP on the one side, and some third force, which could be the BSP at some point in time, the left force at some point in time. Now you've got, apart from the AAP, you've got the Amarinder BJP alliance, and then you've got the farmers. How is the BJP seeing this battle? What's at stake for the BJP?
Thank you very much, Rahul, first of all, for inviting me to this discussion. This election in Punjab is, for want of a better term, I think it's one of a kind. You're absolutely right. The traditional lineups in Punjab, when the BJP was in alliance with the Akalis on the one side, and you had the Congress. And you had the Aam Aadmi Party, which occasionally rose, but sometimes totally collapsed. I mean, I can tell you from my personal experience, when I fought in Amritsar, I had a Congress candidate and an Aam Aadmi Party candidate. And if the Aam Aadmi Party candidate had got 10 or 12% of the votes, I would have won the election. I mean, I got 41% vote in 17 days, but that's not the issue. Issue is the alignments have changed totally. What has happened is that Punjab, by virtue of the fact that we've had a Kisan Andolan, we've had on the one hand, which will result if the Kisans do decide to form a party of their own, which they are likely to. There will be the rural peasantry, the rural Jat vote will face a three-way challenge between the traditional Akali Dal, which laid claim to that vote, the Grameen Halkas and so on, the Kisan Party and the Akali and the Aam Aadmi Party, which is also trying to enter that space. So that is one new factor. Second factor, I think, which is very important in Punjab today, is that having unshackled itself from the Akali Dal, the BJP will be a far more potent and viable force. Because in the 117 member assembly, the BJP never contested more than 20-23 seats. And it had only 5% of the vote share. So, and even in the urban areas, sometimes the BJP did not do well because its alliance with the Akali Dal led to apprehensions, it led to distrust for a variety of reasons.
So while you'll be stronger in the cities, do you accept and acknowledge that there is a deep sense of distrust or uneasiness with the BJP, especially in the rural Punjab, in the pinds of the state, where because of the position the central government took on the farm laws, the BJP is not seen as a very trustworthy party?
I would look at it differently. If you look at the urban vote, and whether it's urban, pure urban, semi-urban, etc., the fact of the matter is that the BJP has a vote bank. BJP also has outreach into the rural area. So if the BJP puts up a lot of Sikh candidates, which I'm expecting them to do, you will have many surprises. That perhaps explains the reason why a lot of prominent Sikhs from all walks of life, retired civil servants, DGPs of police, from the armed forces, are lining up to join the BJP. I mean, in the last few days, if you look at the number of people who've joined, that explains, because I think they see with the alliance with the captain, with the Dhinsa group, etc., many Sikhs who had apprehensions about the earlier Akali Dal alliance will now gravitate towards the BJP because the BJP's own programs, which are development anchored, have a certain appeal to them.
But these aren't mass heavyweights who've joined with a huge backing of voters. These are largely good names to have, but they're not the big Janta ka Neta, as it were.
If any one of them joins and is able to carry 10-15,000 votes with him, plus a traditional BJP vote bank, you will have a BJP victory. I mean, for instance, I don't want to go into examples. There's one person who has joined us, let him remain nameless, twice MLA. He has an NGO which has a 30,000 votes with it. I think people like that are winners. Secondly, Punjab today, the traditional, I mean, we were starting to where the BJP was positioned, but Rahul, look at where the Congress is. The Congress is today facing, I'm not talking about the 5th January incident and, you know, the huge monumental failure on the security front. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ongoing civil war, which is escalating by the day between the incumbent chief minister, who presents a certain platform, and an aspiring chief minister, very colorful person, friend of mine, friend of all of us. That doesn't augur well for the party. And that is why you have a party which has been in power for 5 years, which is now deeply divided, and you have different people articulating their future in a very fractured way.
Let's spend a moment talking about the incident on the 5th of January. It's very clear that this was a big security failure. Do you think this is just sheer incompetence on the part of the state government, or do you attribute malice to what happened?
You know, the dividing line between incompetence and malice is a very thin line. It gets blurred very often. I think incompetence is a large part of it, but I think there was a sinister design. And I'm choosing my words carefully. Sinister design was there. Let us somehow ensure that the Modi rally does not succeed. In the process, they committed harakiri. They shot themselves in the foot, because some basic arrangements which the state government is required to make by virtue of having responsibility for law and order, they failed to do that. In the process, endangered and made vulnerable the Prime Minister's life. Now, one of my colleagues has used the word khuni irade. I was asked on twice, do you subscribe? I said, irada is something you must ask the person who failed in his or her duty, or who failed in state responsibility. But all the facts leading to that means that their intentions were not of a benign nature. They wanted chaos. That is why you have a situation where a police officer is providing details of the route to people who should not be there in the first place. Number two, you have, I mean, your channel, I must say, I want to place on record my appreciation for that. You guys have done a sting operation. It's not a sting operation. Sting operation is something, you know, slightly under the cut. It's an issue involving national security. The man is admitting on record as to what they were doing. Look, I was present in Firozpur that morning. I've seen police officers talk to somebody higher in authority and saying that, look, we have no difficulty removing these people and we have to clear the... Clearing a route for a Prime Minister's visit is not an option. It is a requirement, and the state police has to do it. So I find fault on two fronts. One, this political leadership, the state government abdicated its responsibility. But more than that, I think some people who wanted to do their job, they told them, "Mat karo, kuch gadbad ho jayegi." So they, in fact, fomented trouble. And I think they got caught. That's the important thing.
You come from Punjab, you understand the Sikh psyche, which is why I want to ask you whether you agree with the contention of some of your ministerial colleagues that this seems to be a Khalistani conspiracy. Because, you know, I come from Punjab, there are farmers over there. When someone like a Gurpatwant Pannu is cited as being the person who mobilized the farmers and brought them out, and when you speak to Punjab, they laugh at him. Do you think Pannu, 50 people will come for Pannu? What is the BJP talking about?
No, I'll tell you one thing. First of all, I don't know whether you know Mr. Pannu.
I met him once. He's loony, and I also know that if he did a rally in Punjab, not more than a couple of hundred people will come.
I'll tell you something. Two things happened. One is that Mr. Pannu, I don't want to dignify him. I know him. I know of him. You know, I lived in New York.
He's big on the New York streets.
Yeah. And whenever we had a prime ministerial visit, he would try and do something. Try and do something strange. Look, first of all, the fact that there are attempts to destabilize Punjab, well, and that it comes from across the border, is not something I would have any doubts on. I mean, if you see the evidence emanating from GHQ, etc., there are people in that establishment. And again, I'm being very careful. I'm not saying it's always the state. Sometimes it's other forces there. But that country by and large, our Western neighbor. They are interested in destabilizing Punjab. By destabilization, create chaos and then fish in troubled waters. That's not just Pannu specific, okay? There are a lot of people who during the last 2 years decided that they had a different take on it. The same people today are applauding the Prime Minister for the recent decision. You can see the outpouring of support from places I've served in, and I know them a little more closely. I've seen a statement out of London signed by a member of the House of Lords, whom I happen to know, but I only saw the statement, extremely appreciative of the steps the Prime Minister has taken in the context of Punjab, and criticizing very strongly what happened on 5th of January. I've seen statements out of the United States, out of Canada. So I think in this entire set of events which has evolved, the loonies are being overtaken by the more sane voices, and I think the overwhelming number of people in Punjab and outside who wish Punjab well prefer the mainstream narrative, which is development oriented, and for us to shy away from this kind of lunacy.
I didn't get a direct answer, so I'll ask again. Do you, Hardeep Puri, believe that what happened in Punjab on the 5th of January was a Khalistani conspiracy?
Well, it was a state failure out of which the Khalistanis tried to do that. But there was a Khalistani element. There has to be. You see the statements coming out of the neighboring country, how quick. So I am not in a position to quantify.
Because many of your cabinet are.
I'll say something. We are a big party. We have a number of people, and I think they may be quoted. And I don't know. As I said, when I was asked about the Khuni Irade conduct, I said that what she said could logically follow from the set of circumstances that you saw evolving. But whether the iradi were khuni, that you have to ask the person who was taking those actions. Look, let me just put it this way. I think whenever there is destabilization, people who like to hide behind the Khalistani thing, or people who they try to take advantage of it. In other words, if there is chaos somewhere, somebody will turn around and say, Khalistani ne karwaya. Bare, usme Khalistani bhi honge, I have no doubt. And Mr. Pannu always lends himself to upfront photography.
But in the intellectual circles of Punjab, there is this growing concern that a lot of what might happen, which seems to be going against the BJP government at the centre, is positioned as a Khalistani conspiracy, which if you're trying to mobilize the Hindu vote in urban Punjab might work well in a short-sighted sense, but in a longer time frame is deeply deleterious to India's social fabric.
No, I don't subscribe to that. I don't think anything we are saying or doing, it can only strengthen India's social fabric, both in terms of the kind of groups that you're talking to, the people who are what I call the more articulate urban, elites which talk about it. Look, that there are issues no one is going to run away from. That there were issues in terms of our agriculture, nobody is going to run away from. Equally, the people there, the water table is dropping. You should be diversifying. You should be going into certain areas. In fact, somebody did a calculation for me the other day and said that instead of, once you wanted MSP, PM, even whilst Parliament is in session, he said MSP will stay. There's been record procurement, all these things. Money has gone directly into the farmer's pocket. That's all taken care of.
But that's not what we are contesting. We're not contesting the farm bills, the need to bring those agrarian reform. I'm saying if farmers are protesting, this attempt made by many in the BJP to position those protesting farmers as radical Khalistanis, that's not sitting well with a lot of people in Punjab.
I think when you are in a political discourse like this, allegations fly fast. And every time you see Mr. Pannu's face or somebody else who's identified with what I would call a lunatic fringe, I'm choosing my words carefully, the lunatic fringe, people will say Khalistani, etc. Well, you are having a danga somewhere, you're having chaos, and Mr. Pannu injects his photograph, somebody is liable to make that mistake.
For the BJP here, sir, is that there are protesters who are protesting against the Prime Minister's visit and protesting against the decision on farm laws, and they're not Khalistanis, and they're telling me clearly, we are not Khalistanis, and how dare you call us Khalistanis?
No, but that's fair enough. That's also a semantic arguing point. I think that for quite some time, because the BJP's own inability to reach out to some of these people. And there's an explanation for it. Because we were in an unequal alliance, by unequal I mean an alliance where the entire rural, and this is where the problem arose, that was with the Akali Dal. And the Akali Dal is the party which was fomenting it. I mean, who makes a statement like this, that if any of you go to the rally, you will be walking on the bodies of those 700 who lost their life? This is designed to foment. So here you make a statement, you provoke, you foment trouble, and then say, this is what happened. Look, I think people are seen through this game. And I think BJP has seen through this game, all right? One of the arguments which a senior colleague of mine, alas, he's no longer there, when I used to question, and I know I'm not talking about the time post-2017, when I became a member of the Council of Ministers. Much before that, I used to ask, why are we in alliance? We mean the BJP. I regarded myself as a member much before I joined the cabinet. Why are we in alliance with the Akali? And the argument which came was a very interesting one. You know, when they are in alliance with us, they are mainstream. Otherwise, they will become X, Y, and Z. I won't even go to the extent. I soon came to the conclusion that they are using their alliance with us in order to be able to stoke that constituency. I'm telling you, the best day that has happened in our political life is that they walked out of the alliance. You know, sometimes when you're in a bad marriage, you rather that the other guy breaks it. But it was coming to a point where we would have been left with no option.
But going by the logic of the likes of Arun Jaitley or even Amit Shah, who have very often said the same thing, having the Sikh party and the Hindu party together actually kept Punjab in the middle. Now,
what makes you think the Akali Dal is the only Sikh party? I have a more fundamental. Why can't BJP be the only Sikh party? Look, it is a fact that the Akali Dal would not allow any leader to emerge in Punjab other than their own family. In fact, they didn't even allow Arun to win. You know, there are many takes on why Arun lost the election in 2014. I was there. I spent good 7 to 10 days there. I have a take. One is that some of the acts of omission and commission of the Akali Dal rubbed off onto Arun's candidature. No, I have a more fundamental basis. Actually, the Akali Dal always wanted to be in a position of dominance and control. And therefore, whenever you look at it, apart from the 117 minus 20, 22, 23 seats that we contested, I genuinely believe that the BJP under Mr. Modi, whose commitment to the Sikhs and his actions speak for themselves, can become a party representing not only Sikh aspiration, but Sikh interests.
Let's spend a moment on that. You're saying, why can't the BJP be the party of the Sikhs? I counter ask you this question, that can a party that espouses Hindutva be a party of the Sikhs? Because a lot of Sikhs don't like the idea of a overbearing Hindu or the Hindu way of life standing on their heads and telling them what to do. They think, we're Sikhs, we'll do this our way. You don't tell us what to do.
First of all, Hindutva is not overbearing or dominating, number one. Number two, well, then we need to correct that. I've had very senior members of the community, I've had academic strength. Where did Sikhism come from? You can talk about the Sufi saint period, okay? You can talk about Nanak, etc. But by the time you reach the 10th Guru, the identification marks, which you and I are familiar with, okay? This was to protect the Hindu faith, okay? Now, if you look at it in that and you cut out the lunacy and the on either side, there is absolute compatibility between the Hindus and the Sikhs. Look, I'm a proud Sikh. I didn't choose my religion. I was born into a family of refugees. My parents were both refugees. They happened to be Sikh. I grew up as a proud Sikh. I'm very happily married to somebody who was not born into the Sikh faith. But today, she reads Gurmukhi. I don't. I'm very upfront admitting that. I'm equally comfortable. And I think that the genesis of the Sikh religion, where it came from, the philosophy, etc., it's one of the most beautiful religions in the world. I mean, if you count all the major religions of the world, one that is anchored in egalitarianism. Rahul, one that believes in langar service, one that believes in kirtan, group hymn singing. I mean, we had saints, we had warriors, we had warrior saints and poets. Look at the richness of that. Today, what is a Sikh identified as? Forget about what happened in the end. I was on the Security Council. India was chairing the Security Council when some of the worst fighting took place in Libya and Syria, there were Sikh groups, God knows from where they came. They were doing Langar Seva in a fight which was sectarian between the Shias and the Sunnis, okay? No international organized group support. What happened during the pandemic? Look at what these people did. Langar Society, I'm not talking about the organized Gurdwara. I'm not even going. Look, there is some inward introspection that we need to do as Sikhs. But there is no incompatibility there. You can have a mainstream Bharatiya Janata Party, for all that it stands for, also representing hardcore Sikh aspirations and interests in Punjab. Some may not agree to it. I'm happy to talk to them.
Prime Minister says he's very fond of the Sikh community. Many in the Sikh community says he doesn't understand the Sikh psyche. Do you accept the Prime Minister is not as popular in Punjab as he is in the rest of the Hindi heartland?
I can take any wager with you. If you allow a proper discussion to take place, the Prime Minister's popularity in Punjab is no less than his popularity anywhere in the country. Let me tell you how. If they had not disrupted the events on the 5th, the Prime Minister would have had lakhs of people turning out to listen to him in spite of the rain. And that was their major nightmare. Because they are trying to construct a political discourse based on this Hindu-Sikh antipathy, to put it mildly, antagonism, maybe a little stronger, but they're trying to create a rift. Now there are people including amongst the Sikhs, I'm sorry, including amongst the Hindus, but you know, when you're trying to forge a convergence, when you're trying to point out the compatibility that exists between the majority religion and the minority religion, you always play on the forces making for convergence. And I am very confident that now, the way the situation will unfold, people will see reason. And the issue is not just things you do for the Sikhs. You know, the GST tax, Kartarpur Sahib corridor, 333 people removed from the blacklist. That's only one part. The battle for the Sikh hearts and mind, the Sikh psyche, I think that thing is on.
Will the Prime Minister be doing another rally, or you've had enough? You don't want to do any more rallies in Punjab in this campaign season?
First of all, you can reach that stage and not for me to answer. First of all, are you going to have any rallies? Look, with the numbers, I ask you. I was asked on a show like this, but you know, why aren't you guys stopping rallies? I mean, next day, the Election Commission did it, and the BJP, being an obedient political party, one that respects the rule of law, we stopped. We didn't doing it virtually. Look, what will be the mechanism for reach out? I mean, there are those announcements for 42,500 crores. You know, the Delhi-Kata Expressway, the PGI satellite. I don't think during the course of a campaign when the code of conduct is on. But you know, everybody knew what it was, etc. So you take that as a given, all right? A lot of people will write about it. How the outreach will take place, whether it will be physical or virtual, you know, time will tell. We are just beginning to start. I think the time from the 21st onwards, when you have nominations and people in play, that's when the real contours, the delineation will take shape.
At this moment, opinion polls and just general conventional wisdom in Punjab seems to suggest the Aam Aadmi Party is in pole position, even if they're not close to being able to get a majority. Is a Aam Aadmi Party government in Punjab the BJP's worst nightmare?
I can answer that question in one of two ways. One is that I'm a citizen of Delhi. I know the Aam Aadmi Party here. You know, ever since I became minister in September 2017, DTC के buses आ रही हैं 4.5 साल हो गए कोई नहीं आई. चुनाव के पहले 8 lakh jobs they will produce. I don't know where they are. They've forgotten to talk about it. We'll produce world-class mohalla clinics. My God, a few days ago, they ended up administering some harsh medicine to a child. I mean, and the consequences are known. World-class education. So they're very tall on making promises. I believe the mass is wiser and more constant. People understand what Aam Aadmi politics is. In a situation like this, where there is absolute disenchantment with the Congress and the Akali.
Not linked to my question, you dodged it. You understood what I was asking, but you chose to go on a different tangent.
No, I'm not. I'm going to give you a direct answer.
My question, sir, is this. AAP is not Congress. Kejriwal is far more feisty than Rahul Gandhi is. He gets under the skin of some BJP leaders. Given the fact that they already rule Delhi. They're trying to expand in places
Your
like
question
Goa.
is their worst nightmare?
Is it therefore BJP's worst nightmare to have an AAP government in Punjab?
First of all, BJP today has 303 seats plus in parliament. BJP in all the 5 states that elections are going to take is going to do well. I don't think any political party, let alone the Aam Aadmi Party, is going to be a nightmare for the thing. God forbid if you were to have any political startup or outfit win, we'll deal with it. I mean, I don't want to go on record on what Mr. Kejriwal's views on Bhagwan Maan are. I mean, I can separately have a discussion with you on that. Now, if he wants an endorsement from the people of Punjab, look, we are very...
He doesn't have a good view of
Well, I'm not
Wait, now you have a story you're not telling us. You must tell us the story.
I will tell you
because
the story.
Bhagwan Maan is about to be announced as CM.
Yes, I'm glad after the people endorse him. So this is a bit of theatrics involved in that. Well, I want to appoint you. He also, but he wants people's endorsement in addition. The other endorsement will come. Wait a minute. Let me answer your question directly. No. The BJP would like the elections in Punjab to throw up a responsible government which has the interests of Punjab at its heart and which is able to carry out development in this sensitive border state. If you go into the history of the Aam Aadmi Party, what they've done in the past, what they're capable of doing, somebody told me they're maturing. They created chaos in Delhi once in a wintry night, etc. They all lay down on pavements, etc. You don't play loose ball in a border state which is a sensitive state. I wouldn't be too worried about that. We can deal with those situations. BJP
How's your alliance with Amarinder Singh coming along? Is Captain Amarinder now a spent force? What is he bringing to the BJP bandwagon? Are you hoping that he'll help mute some of the anger amongst people who are upset with the farm laws? That's the purpose he serves. You got a credible judge Sikh face.
I think you're being a little harsh, Rahul. I think you're being a little harsh. Captain has not only long-standing history, he has what we call chavi. He is respected as a icon of the Sikh community. And if I were to compare him with some of the others who are in the fray, he's far more respected than some of those self-styled, people who make statements. I think Captain brings with him many things. He brings with him a sober, mature view on national security. He brings a very good line. And you contrast that. Look, I was privileged. And as a disciple, I was very privileged to be on that first Jatha, if I may call it that, where we went to Kartarpur Sahib. Rahul, I contrast the kind of statements that the captain made and the dignity with which he conducted himself with what our friend, the aspiring, the one who aspires to be chief minister, what he said, Jaffi Pappi politics, no understanding of what the, security strategic quotient is in this part of the world. I remember getting into a bus in which Mr. Imran Khan was there, and the first question, I don't know whether he knew where, oh, Sada Sidhu kithe hai? I mean, it's captured on camera. I thought I'd witnessed something, somebody took it on camera. Here, anything you say or do just get captured on camera quite easily. Look, I said 2 things to you. Captain and Mr. Dhinsa prove at the very least that the Bharatiya Janata Party, for whatever it stands for, is a responsible party and good for the state of Punjab. That is the message that they bring. Okay. Individually, look, I don't like having a discussion, is somebody a spent force? Frankly, I don't agree with that. Some of our most respectable people, they bring a lot of gravitas. And age and activism is perhaps not the issue.
Well, we have an unpredictable election ahead of us. You have a few busy weeks ahead of you. Wish you all the best. Hardeep Singh Puri, thank you so much for joining us. It's interesting talking politics with you. We've spoken about what you're doing at the ministry. We've spoken when you were in New York and elsewhere. It's interesting to see you in your avatar as a politician. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.